Hello and welcome back to the channel this evening. My name is Andy and we're back with another race review. This time it's from today's German Grand Prix. Boy oh boy do we have a lot to go through this evening, covering off what's happened this weekend, never mind just what happened in the race today, which we'll get to in just a moment's time. But what a weekend it has been for sure. Many things happening over the weekend. We're going to dive straight into it. Let's get straight to the point. The first big bit of news over the weekend was Lewis Hamilton signing a 2-year contract extension with Mercedes that will take him up to the end of the 2020 season. That was announced on the Thursday, and then on the Friday morning we heard that Valtteri Bottas had been signed up by Mercedes as well for another season with the option of an extra one as well for 2020. So what that means is that at this moment in time, should Mercedes take up the option on Bottas, which is most likely, then come the end of 2020, at the moment Hamilton, Bottas, Vettel, Verstappen are all out of contract before the new rule changes in 2021. The announcements by Mercedes are likely to mean Daniel Ricciardo will sign for Red Bull, and I would be surprised if it was anything other than a 2-year deal that Daniel signs, which means that the driver market for 2021 is going to be absolutely insane when it comes around. There's just going to be so much going on. People, drivers jostling for the best seats. We're going to have other drivers in there as well, like Leclerc coming through. Lando Norris might even be in. McLaren had a couple of seasons in the seats by then. It's going to be such an interesting driver market, I think, for the 2021 season, and it is going to be really interesting to watch how it all develops. But I do expect Ricciardo to sign a 2-year deal with Red Bull in the coming weeks, if you want my honest opinion. Moving on away from the deals news, into practice itself, FP1 and FP2, both headed by Red Bull. Daniel Ricciardo himself taking the fastest lap in P1, and Verstappen took the fastest lap in FP2, but both times the Mercedes, the number 44, the defending champion, Lewis Hamilton, less than a tenth of a second behind. The Red Bulls showing a bit of speed, it would seem, but as the weekend would go on, we'd realise that it wasn't quite to be what they were hoping for. During the Friday, we obviously kind of expected this, but Daniel Ricciardo was confirmed that he had taken a new engine. He was going to be starting from pretty much at the back of the grid. And then FP3 on Saturday was a washout. Charles Leclerc and Marcus Ericsson topped the session, but only 10 cars took to the track on a very soaking wet track it was. But it dried up in time for qualifying, and then in Q1, already through to Q2, but on the way back to the pits trying to do one more fast lap, Hamilton ran wide at turn 1. The car bounced and juttered and jolted over the curbs in the AstroTurf onto the outside of turn 1, and he slowed down and pulled over. A loss of hydraulic pressure causing the problem, and he was out, and he started 14th because of that. Ricciardo would be 19th because Brendan Hartley took a fresh engine change as well, so he started from the back. But back up at the front, it was Sebastian Vettel taking full advantage of Hamilton's misfortunes, taking the pole position 2 tenths faster than Valtteri Bottas. The Ferrari just switching on when it needed to be. Typically Ferrari, keep it quiet on the Friday, show up on the Saturday and knock it out of the park, and Vettel done that in front of his home fans and went into the race with the best chance of finally winning his home Grand Prix. It's something he's never done at Hockenheim, and he had the chance to do it here, being on pole. Best of the rest was the Haas drivers once again in 5th and 6th, and Charles Leclerc once again top 10 into qualifying. And it was just looking like going to be a very interesting race, which was made even more interesting with the possibility of rain. A 40% chance of rain, it was said at the start of the race, and that was going to make things very interesting indeed, especially if it was anything like Saturday morning. The start of the race itself, it was quite crazy, but it was clean. It went down to the hairpin at one point. I'm sure I've seen about 4 or 5 wide into the hairpin at one point, which was really, really interesting. And yet they all came through it. Verstappen and Raikkonen carried on where he left off at Silverstone last time out. Raikkonen managing to stay ahead of the Dutch driver on that occasion. Hamilton took his time, came through the field. He was up to P11 by the end of lap 3, so he'd only raised a few places in that time. Vettel had quickly built a 1.5 second lead, and by the time lap 4, Hamilton was up to P10 as he slowly came through the field. Some of the drivers realising there's no point in trying to stop the faster Mercedes, just going to screw yourself about. But on lap 7 I noticed something, and it shows you what we already know, and it's the gulf in the field between the top 3 teams and everybody else. So on lap 6, Kevin Magnussen in the Haas was 5th place, but by that point he was already 7 seconds behind Verstappen, who was in 4th, and I believe it is something close to 20 seconds behind Sebastian Vettel in the lead in 6 laps. Now what you got to remember is that Haas has the same engine in the back of that Ferrari, and yet 20 seconds between them. It just shows you the difference between the top 3 teams and everybody else, and it's why there's almost like a 2-tier championship. So I did notice that, and it was really interesting. As it went on though, Daniel Ricciardo, he was struggling for grip. He started on the medium tyres, whereas Hamilton had started on the yellow banded softs. He was struggling for grip early doors, but once they were up to temperature, he started coming through the field slowly. By lap 6, Hamilton was up to P6, by lap 12, and Ricciardo made the top 10 a few laps later. By this point, Vettel was about 3.5, 4 seconds clear of Bottas, and he was just managing it. And obviously the threat of rain coming in over the forest trees was lingering, and the drivers were trying to stretch out the ultra soft tyres as long as they possibly could. But by lap 14 we started hearing the drivers struggling. Romain Grosjean really struggling for grip in the Haas. He dropped back a good number of positions because of that. Magnussen was trying to get up. He tried and failed to hold off Hamilton, for P5, and that was on lap 14 as well. Hamilton then up to the top 5 and just behind the Verstappen, Raikkonen, Bottas and Vettel. But in lap 15 Raikkonen pitted from 3rd place, and he went from the ultra soft to the soft tyres, and it seemed to be quite early. One or two thoughts there. Either one, they were trying to force Bottas into doing something different to what Mercedes wanted to do. The other one being obviously getting back out in front of Lewis Hamilton, possibly to hold him up and keep him from getting close to being within a pit stop window of Vettel up front. Ricciardo made P10 eventually on lap 20. Lap 21 we started seeing some more pit stops. Magnussen, Sainz and Leclerc all pitted. Grosjean on the next lap. He then passed Hartley into the hairpin on his out lap. Stroll was really slow through the hairpin. Grosjean almost hit him. Sainz passes Hartley as well. Sainz nearly hitting the back of Grosjean. Whole concertina effect. Thought it was going to be a crash at one point. And then in front of him, Hülkenberg made up a couple of places as Ericsson and Ocon were fighting it out into the Mercedes section. And he was like, thank you very much, I'll have 2 places, even said it on the radio. Perez had a slow stop. He got a sticking wheel nut. That cost him about 5 to 7 seconds, which was frustrating for him. And at that point, because of the pit stops, P12 to P20 were pretty much nose to tail. And into the hairpin, I think it was lap 25 or something like that. 3 separate passing moves into the hairpin for between those places. I can't remember the drivers, it was all happening at once. But yeah, it was crazy what was going on further back. And then on lap 26, Sebastian Vettel pitted. He locked up the tyres on his way in, and he pitted there, and he rejoined in P4 behind Raikkonen, but ahead of Lewis Hamilton still, who still hadn't pitted by this point. Bottas stayed out for a few laps. He pitted on lap 29, and then on the same lap Ricciardo retired at a loss of power, and I believe it has been confirmed that brand new Renault power unit had a fault. and considering they took the engine change here so that they could have a clean run at Budapest, that might be up in smoke now, and that could be the end of any tiny possibilities that Ricciardo had or Red Bull had of even getting close up to the championship battle later on in the year. Lap 30 seen Verstappen pit. He moved from ultra softs to softs as well. And then lap 33 we start hearing the radio chatter between Ferrari and Vettel and Raikkonen. Vettel going on about, they're both complaining about blisters. Vettel's saying, I can go faster if you let me pass, get Raikkonen to move. The team's like, there's rain coming in 10 to 15 minutes as well. And during this time, as the Ferraris are blistering those soft tyres, Hamilton, who had been on the tyres, the same soft tyres for 30 plus laps, was actually lapping half a second faster than the Ferraris at that stage for a period. And Vettel eventually, still back on the radio, let me through, and eventually they came on to Kimi. It was actually Jock Clear, who's actually one level above Kimi's own race engineer, came on and says, didn't really say Kimi move out of the way initially, but he kind of worded it as such, and Kimi's like, why don't you just tell me? Anyway, he let him through, and before you knew it, boom, Vettel was off really, really quickly. He made up a good number of seconds pretty sharply. Lap 35 we then seen Van Dorn running slowly, but he managed to get back out. It was an engine issue, and he managed to reset everything and it started working, but it cost him 30 seconds, and that would come back to haunt him later on, in essence, but I'll come back to that when I'm running through the drivers. But he managed to continue, and eventually, say, Raikkonen locking up, Vettel locking up. Lap 39 was when Raikkonen got the radio message about looking after the tyres not to hold up Vettel, and he was away again, and within a matter of laps he was 2 seconds clear, but Bottas was catching, Hamilton was catching as well, and it was just really, really quick. Bottas was catching up to Hamilton because Hamilton still hadn't pitted, and he eventually did on lap 42, moved from the softs to the ultra softs. Now at this point the rain was expected within a matter of moments, but it wasn't expected to be heavy as what Mercedes thought. So what they'd done was they put Hamilton in, put him on the ultra softs, being that if he's on a brand new set of tyres, keeps the heat in them well because they are brand new. Even on the wet track, when it comes to the dry part of the track, he's still going to have enough temperature to really go for it, and it proved to be a pretty good strategy call from Mercedes to do so. Considering some of the calls they've made in recent races, it proved to be really, really good for that to be the case. The rain fell on lap 44. We first seen it at turn 6 at the hairpin. Sauber was decided to gamble with Charles Leclerc, and he'd been having a decent race at that point, just around about the outskirts of the top 10 or so, and he pitted for the Inters instead Alonso, and Pierre Gasly went full wet tyres, which baffled pretty much everybody. He was obviously thinking he was going to look like a hero if it bucketed down like it did on Saturday morning, but it didn't, until after the race at least. But those who pitted, they struggled, they fell back really, really quickly. It was not the right time for Inters at that point. The rain started getting a wee bit more intense. Verstappen pitted on lap 47 from P3. He was only ahead of Hamilton at that point. He only let Hamilton through. He basically had a free pit stop, so it was worth the go. The only way they were going to win the race, Red Bull, was to try something a little bit different. So they gave it a go, but it wasn't to be, and he was back in the pits 2 laps later. During the time from Verstappen pitting from Inters and then back to the Ultrasofts, we seen Vettel lose part of his front wing. We seen Leclerc coming back in as well to change tyres along with Alonso. Then Leclerc had a full 360 through turn 1. And then we had more radio chat about the rain from Hamilton. The team said it's only going to last about 3 minutes. We seen Leclerc going through the grass around the curving straight at the Parabolica curve. Bottas trying to pass Raikkonen. We seen Perez spinning. Bottas getting by Raikkonen as he was forced wide by Magnussen. Everybody was struggling for grip. You could really see it. The rain had moved to cover more parts of the track by this point. It started covering turn 2, 3, heading up towards the turn 6 hairpin, and they were really struggling for heat in the tyres, but Hamilton was able to take it easy through those parts. Because he was able to keep the heat in the tyres, he was making a lot of ground and was catching up very, very quickly. And then it happened. The picture you see on your screen, lap 52, Vettel coming into the stadium section, into the Sachs curve, locked up, so started squirming. He was really careful, he caught the fronts, the rears locked. He was either going to spin into the gravel and be stuck, or he was going to do what he did and he crashed into the barriers, and he was out. And you heard the radio chatter, he was almost in tears at what had happened, swearing. You could hear it in his voice, he was trembling, he was really, really annoyed at himself. He took the full blame himself later on. That caused the safety car. Bottas pitted. Mercedes had the wrong tyres ready, and then eventually got the ultra softs out. They were going to put him on inters, but he didn't lose P3. Hamilton started to pit and then aborted cutting across the grass. Raikkonen pitted the following lap for ultra softs. So Hamilton now leads from Bottas and Raikkonen. During the safety car, Sirotkin retires. He had an oil leak, which was a shame because it was actually his best weekend he's had so far. He's showing a bit of decent pace out there. And then Stroll was out as well. He had brake failure. He pulled out into the garage. And during all of the pit stops, Haas were the biggest losers. They had gone for intermediates and then realised that was wrong and had to pit for the dries again. Force India's gained the most out of that. Both Perez and Ocon were up to P6 and P7. They stayed out in the dries, they made it work, and then pitted under the safety car for fresher tyres. So that worked for their favour. And then it restarted lap 57 with 10 laps to go. We had Hamilton, Bottas, Raikkonen, Verstappen, your top four. Hülkenberg was 5th, and he had got lucky. He'd gone intermediates and came back in for dries, but didn't lose 5th place. So it was lucky for him. Ocon 6th, Perez 7th, Ericsson was 8th, Hartley was in 9th in the Toro Rosso, having not pitted for Inters either, and Grosjean was 10th after the hassle of pitting. Bottas was then trying to pass Hamilton. Hamilton obviously taking a bit longer to get the tyres up to temperature, being older tyres, and then the team came on the radio and says Valtteri is hold position, which Valtteri took copy. But once Hamilton had the tyres up to temperature, he was long gone pretty quickly, showing phenomenal speed in that car. He got out of DRS range pretty quickly, and he held that position right to the end and took a win by, I think it was about 4 or 5 seconds. He took that win by, went from P14 to P1. Bottas managed to hold on for 2nd, Raikkonen 3rd. Verstappen was catching Raikkonen for 4th. Hülkenberg took 5th. Grosjean came back through the field in the fresh tyres, took 6th place in the last lap from Perez, who was 7th. Ocon 8th. We had Ericsson in 9th, and Hartley took the last point in 10th. And it was a good race for the Kiwi. He needed that, well needed point. It's been a horrible season for him. Magnussen 11th, Sainz 12th, Van Dorn was 13th. I said it would come back to haunt him, that engine issue that cost him 30 seconds, because he didn't pit for Inters. The team says let's pit, and he said no, and he stayed out. And if it hadn't been for the 30 seconds, he could quite possibly have been in the points, and like Hartley, he could have done with that, because he's not had the greatest season, let's be honest about it. Gasly 14th after trying that desperate move onto the full wets. Leclerc was 15th, and Alonso classified 16th, but he retired in the last lap with a gearbox issue, which I can't see him wanting to stay at McLaren right now, to be honest with you. I really can't. So the race had finished, and we had a jubilant winner in Lewis Hamilton back at the top of the championship. And then 90 minutes after the race had finished, the stewards announced that they are investigating the incident with Hamilton cutting across the pit lane during the safety car. And there's obviously the fault there was that he's, the race victory's in doubt now. Obviously he might get a time penalty, which, by the way, Carlos Sainz got a 10-second time penalty during the race because he made a pass as the safety car came out and didn't give it back, so that cost him some time too. But it was the fact it took 90 minutes after the incident for them to investigate. I don't get that. It was just really, really strange. But anyway, he was given a reprimand and not a time penalty. And the reasons for it were that obviously you heard the chatter, box, box, box. They were going to do the opposite of Raikkonen. Raikkonen stayed out, stay out, no, in, and Hamilton had already aborted the attempt. The other part, so that was one part obviously the stewards took into consideration. The other part as well was that the rule around the pit entry line, which people have brought up Raikkonen in Baku 2016. Hamilton had entered the pit lane. Raikkonen was into the entry bit where the line was and then cut back to the race track at full speed. Hamilton had entered the pit lane and obviously then went across the grass as well. And what also saved them as well was the fact that A, it was under the safety car, so it's slower speeds, and B, there was no one around him, so he didn't endanger any other driver at that time. Now I know some people have been kicking up a fuss using the Raikkonen incident, saying just being biased, but when you take everything into consideration, if you were hearing that radio conversation, what would you have done? I mean, you're following instructions, so quite tricky. Raikkonen was just trying to pull an extra bit of slipstream that day, and it had been well documented by the stewards, that one. So I think, and honestly, I'm not a Hamilton, fan or anything. I appreciate he's a great driver, but I think it was the right choice. The slower speeds of the safety car helped. The wet weather obviously made it bit treacherous as well, stuff like that. So, and obviously by going over the grass, he ran the risk of damaging the car, which could have ruined his race as well. The curbing on the inside, he could have caught the wing on that too, so he could have damaged the car doing that. He didn't, and he won the race. And now it means going into Hungary this coming Sunday next week, Hamilton is now leading 188 points to 171 from Sebastian Vettel. Raikkonen in third and 131. I've lost count of how many podiums that is in a row now for the Iceman. He's doing really well with podiums right now. But I want to see him win. I think he deserves one more win, because I get the feeling he'll retire at the end of the season. Ferrari will bring up Leclerc. I know I've been saying it for ages, but hey. But I want to see him get a win before the season's out. He deserves it, I think. Bottas now 422, Ricciardo 106 points, still in 5th. Verstappen now a point behind him on 105, and Hülkenberg is best of the rest on 52. In the Teams Championship, the Constructors, it's Mercedes in 316, I think it is, or 310, I can't read my own writing. Ferrari on 302, Red Bull on 211, Renault on 80. They've gained a few points there with Hülkenberg's 5th place. That's done them pretty good. Force India in 5th on 59, tied with Haas on 59 points, and then it's McLaren behind. So still all to play for that best of the rest position. And there's been talk as well that like Sauber are going to stop development on this year's car and start looking towards next year, with the team principal even saying they're going to look for 4th place as the target, which is quite ambitious, but being a kind of Ferrari B team in a sense, you never know. So it's going to be interesting to see what developments come. We all know the top teams, especially Ferrari and Mercedes, they can't afford to let up. They've got to keep trying. They're in a championship battle. Renault have said as early as the French Grand Prix that they're going to start winding down development as well. So that midfield battle could be very interesting come the end of the season, that's for sure. But it's definitely going to be a very interesting run into the season. Now, as I say, we've got the Hungarian Grand Prix next week at the Hungaroring, and that's the last race before the summer break. But with this race here, we are now halfway through the championship year. 11 races down, 10 to go. We're halfway through the season now, and it's going to be really interesting to see what happens in Hungary. It's traditionally been quite a good track for Red Bull, but it remains to be seen, obviously, in regards to Ricciardo's engine, what the situation is there. And then we've got 3 weeks off before Belgium, which is going to obviously always be a fun race at Belgium. And then we hit Monza, and then we go to the Asian races with Singapore, Japan, then we come to America and Mexico, Brazil, and finishing up in Abu Dhabi. So it's going to be a heck of a run-in And this championship battle, this race for the 5th championship between Vettel and Hamilton, I think is just going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth for the rest of the season. And I think that Ferrari, if they can keep doing what they're doing, and they don't tail off like they did at the end of last season with reliability issues, I think Ferrari looks stronger than Mercedes. I really do, and I think it's going to be extremely exciting. I think this could go down to Abu Dhabi. I really, really do. And if it does, thank God they don't do double points anymore. That's all I can say to that. But anyway, that is it for the German Grand Prix. What a friggin' race that was. I had literally got 3 pages worth of notes here. And usually only last maybe a page and a half or 2 pages tops. I got 3 full pages worth of notes to go through there, and it's just... I just couldn't... I was watching it and I just couldn't keep my eyes off what was going on, especially with the rain. Was it coming, was it not? It was just a great race. Hopefully Hungary can be a good race as well. It's sometimes got the bit of being a bit of a boring race because it's like Monaco without the barriers, so be interesting to see. But that is it for this week. My name is Andy. Thank you very much for watching. If you do enjoy it, hit the like button, comment below what do you think of the race. What do you think of that decision from the stewards to give Hamilton a reprimand for the pit lane incident? What do you think should have been? Comment below, tell me what you think there. And if you haven't done so already, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell icon as well, so you don't miss any other race reviews that I do or any other videos I do. If you want to see another video from me, just have a look on the screen in just a moment. You'll see another one. I published a top 6 Porsche race car video just yesterday. Have a check of that out, tell me if you agree with my choices. I'll be back next week with a roundup of the Hungarian Grand Prix. Until then, my name's Andy. You take care, and I'll see you again soon. Ta-ra.